Okay, are we live streaming now? Yes.
And we're live streaming and we're going to record the session now.
Okay. Okay, so we can start. Good afternoon to all. Welcome to the ones who join us today. We already had 2 sessions last week on Wednesday and on Friday. So we will try to avoid repeating our introduction, but for the ones who just joined us today, we just give some overview of some aspects. So I am Natalie Nunes. I am a researcher at the Center for Social Studies of the University of Coimbra. I am a member of the co-coordination team together with my colleagues Beatriz Caetano, Isabel Ferreira, Gonçalo Canto-Muniz, who is the principal investigator of the project, and also my colleague Fabio Sampaio, who is our research manager. So we are all very pleased to welcome you today. So please note that the session is being recorded, just for the registration of the event, of our exchange and presentations. And we are also live streamed, but we will not have the open discussions recorded or kept in the YouTube channel. So this is an event organized by the URBiNat project. The URBiNat project is a project funded by the European Union, and it tackles urban regeneration in 7 European countries and cities, more exactly. And we will show you the map of our community of practice together with the members of our consortium in a minute. So one of the pillars of the project is social and solidarity economy. That we invite you today to know better and to discuss. We will start our session with a very short introduction about URBiNat, and then also as an introduction, our colleague Beatriz Caetano will present how social and solidarity economy is constituting one of the pillars of the URBiNat proposal in the context of urban regeneration. And she will also give an overview of our event, and namely our presenters and our moderator of today who kindly accepted our invitation. We have a partner also in this event, ECOSOL. It's a research group of the Center for Social Study, who was with us in the 2 first sessions, but who contributed a lot and with whom we will continue to exchange along the project. So as already mentioned, so URBiNat is a project funded by the European Union. It tackles urban regeneration in 7 European cities: Porto in Portugal, Siena in Italy, Sofia in Bulgaria, Nantes in France, Nova Gorica in Slovenia, Brussels in Belgium, and Otje-Tastrup in Denmark. But through its community of practice, which includes observers, it also resonates in Iran, Brazil, China, Oman, and Japan. URBiNat's proposal is to co-create healthy corridors in the public space, connecting social neighborhoods or disadvantaged residential areas based on the co-creation of nature-based solutions with citizens. Its community of partners consists of an international consortium of 28 partners from 15 countries, gathering cities, experts, practitioners, companies, research centers, and universities. As such, URBiNat's partners bring together different perspectives, expertise, and experiences in the academic, technical, and political field. So URBiNat healthy corridors take the full physical, mental, and social well-being of citizens as its main goal. It aims to co-plan a healthy corridor in each city as an innovative and flexible nature-based solution, which itself integrates a large number of micro nature-based solutions emerging from community-driven design process. The co-creation process of URBiNat has 4 stages: co-diagnostic, co-design, co-implementation, and co-monitoring. URBiNAT's frontrunner cities are now developing their project of LC Corridor, entering the co-implementation stage, and the follower cities, they entered the co-diagnostic stage, but have been networking, sharing knowledge, experience, and interest since the beginning with our community, within our community of practice. URBiNAT's catalog of nature-based solutions as an initial input and inspiration for co-creation challenges the conventional definitions of nature-based solutions by not only integrating solutions inspired by nature such as territorial and technological ones, comprising products and infrastructures, but it also includes participatory solutions, as well as social and solidarity economy solutions, comprising processes and services. This way, it reinforces the dialogue between the physical structure and the social dimension of the public space. And this happens precisely through the dimensions of participation and social and solidarity economy. So Beatrice Caetana will now develop a little bit more this aspect of the project that our event is focusing today. Beatrice, do you want to share the screen? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Natalie. I will share my screen just to follow some slides and general information about, let me see how to put in presentation mode. So I think everything is okay. So good afternoon for everyone. Welcome to all. My name is Beatriz. Again, I'm researcher at CES in the URBiNAT project, and I'm member of EcoSol group. It's a EcoSol group is a study group about on solidarity economy issues. First, I would like to thank you for all that will participate in this third seminar series, and also to thank you for the speakers who kindly accepted our invitation, namely the EcoSol group, the members of URBiNAT Scientific Commission, local associations, URBiNAT partners. Thank you. I'd like just to introduce some general aspects about solidarity economy and how we understand solidarity economy as fundamental part of the URBiNAT project. Let me see what next slide. Okay, sorry, just come on. So the context of the emergence of the solidarity economy occurs above all with the decreasing satisfaction of the population's needs in the capitalist systems, which is increasingly distant from its social nature and its commitment to the community. A capitalist economy based on private ownership of the means of production, competition, and maximizing profits. As a consequence, we are witnessing the perpetuation of poverty in scenarios of economic crisis and neoliberal crisis. Solidarity economy as a concept emerging in the 1990s when, on the initiative of citizens, producers, and consumers, numerous organized economic activities emerged. Its distinctive aspects are, first one is the establishing means of production shared by all. The common interest prevails over the individual interest. And the third one, its main objective is not profit, but solidarity and cooperation in pursuit of the good life of all. The goods and services produced are recognized at their value in use, and therefore, in this model, economic activities are organized according to the principles of cooperation, autonomy, and democratic management. There are several types of practice that emerged and quickly multiplied in various forms, such as income generation collectives, popular canteens, production and marketing cooperatives, exchange networks and clubs, proximity services, indigenous productive communities, consumption groups, exchange circuits with social currency, community bank, complementary currencies, short circuits, popular mutualities, cultural currencies, among others. from the field of solidarity finance. Different modalities already recognized, such as cooperatives, cooperative bank, cooperative savings or credit bank, microfinance, microcredit, microdeposits, common bank, ethical finance, social currencies, local exchange systems, community banks, banks of hours or time bank, community savings, solidarity fairs, and markets. Solidarity economy practice arise in a dynamic context already fed by the historical trajectory of the so-called older economies and new economies, such as mutual economy, community economics, social economy, feminist economics, popular economy, the growth economy, or more recently, economy of Francisco and Clara. Many times, solidarity economy is recognized as synonym of social economy, but indeed the solidarity economy generates more visibility to the economic community-based initiatives, including formal initiatives based on co-managed and self-managed models. URBiNAT, but our central question is, how does the solidarity economy contribute to the urban regeneration of neighborhoods? So URBiNAT's approach to urban regeneration, solidarity economy has as one of its pillars, which introduce sustainable logic of cooperation and solidarity in complement to profit logic, change the model of profit distribution. URBiNAT recognizes the social and solidarity economy as an opportunity to build a different urban space and to analyze its complexity, to reveal the multidimensional and intersectional causes behind inequalities and the fragmentation in the cities, to enhance the impact of NBS, and also to adopt an active and reflective stance on issues such as exclusion and on the role of political and private sectors. Also, solidarity economy changes in power relations through the revigoration of the notion of community, the creation of different forms of self-organization and solidarity among social groups, and the expansion of meaningful practices that reinvent decision-making mechanisms. So today, with our third seminar, so during 3 days, we has been discussing different issues around solidarity economy. During the first meeting, we discussed about urban public space, the relation with commons concept, justice and social reproduction. On Friday, the meeting was discussed the social economy practice for neighborhoods and revitalization. And today our proposal is to discuss the sustainability of nature-based solution and different contributions from solidarity economy. It's a pleasure to be here and to start to discuss with URBiNAT partners. So for today, we pretend establish a dialogue space with about social and solidarity economy and market potential with city facilitators, our partner in URBiNAT, which has speakers Luis Noringi, to explore different methods or different ways that you can be used to measure the social economy impact of NBS, in particular the Sroe methodology with Natalie Valle from University of Antwerp, to discuss the experience and cases from Nordic countries with Knud Erik, and DTI also is partner in the URBiNAT project to discuss the social entrepreneurship opportunities for increase the participation, and also to discuss the emerging urban landscape regeneration and circular economy based on the CLIC project experience, with Marco Acri presentation from University of Nova Gorica. So also Milena Tasheva Petrova will produce some questions, different inputs, comments on the presentation as they discussed today. So again, I'd like to thank you for the speakers, and also to invite Gonçalo Canto Muniz as the moderator for this roundtable. Invite the audience to participate, put some questions in the chat if you'd like, or participate in the open discussion in the end of the roundtable. So I give the floor to the Gonçalo, who will moderate this roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatriz, Natalie, for the introduction. Thank you all for coming to the last seminar of this series on the solidarity economy for urban regeneration. It has been great to attend all the discussions that were very fruitful in the last two meetings, and today we'll have the focus on the sustainability of nature-based solutions and solidarity economy. So, as Beatriz already mentioned, we will have four colleagues from URBiNAT from different tasks and work package in the project, and it will be interesting also to follow the articulations in different perspectives, also in an interdisciplinary way. We will start with Louise Noring, our colleague, founder of City Facilitators, who is our partner and leader of the work package that leads with the market assessments and business case for NBS. Louise, she's assistant professor and research director of the Copenhagen Business School Sustainable Urbanization team, and she's served as EU commissioned policy expert advising on sustainable urbanization and nature-based solutions. She's also a research and work interest applied research and scholarship focus on urban governance and finance. So thank you, Louise, for joining us again, and we are looking forward for your approach on the topic. Thank you very much. You will have 15 minutes. I will do a sign to you on the 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Gonçalo. Thank you, Natalie and Beatriz, for inviting me to present. I appreciate that. I hope I can share my screen with you. It should be possible, but otherwise you'll have to grant me permission. Oh, it is possible.
It's
there
possible.
You go. Okay, so as Gonçalo said, we are responsible for looking at the business potential in Nantes, Porto, and Sofia. And what we have done is we have shortlisted a catalog of NBS solutions with the help of local community input, with the purpose of trying to identify what are the best market potential solutions in each front runner city. We've done so with desktop research, interviews, and a survey. However, as you can probably imagine, our work has been heavily influenced by COVID. So we have completed the desktop, all the research in Sofia. It's partially completed in Porto, and it's still open in Nantes. And our report 7.1 is still under review. So let me just make sure. Yes, it doesn't really work. Okay, so we have 47 fully completed responses in Sofia. And this is the result, aggregated result of the survey. Data, I mean, what we can conclude here with the area is well maintained with beautiful plants, which has received 40.4% of all the 47 respondents. Unfortunately, it indicates that also in general, if you look across the evidence, that the NBS solutions with little commercial potential have actually received the strongest support from our survey respondents. So we also did an analysis of 10 for-profit and 15 non-profit organizations. So these organizations or companies come from all different areas: education, food, social, solidarity, economy, nature, so on. And in Sofia, we shortlisted Mr. Green Walls that provide green walls outside and inside buildings as the winner. And this was done also with the survey, interviews, and in collaboration with the local URBiNAT team and the city government. In Porto, we had 43 non-profit and for-profit organizations were analyzed, and we shortlisted New City. They are offering greening of roofs, walls, and land in the Campania area, and their business case is commercial, and they rely on a highly competent team. And in Nand, the survey is ongoing. As you can see, this is a screenshot of one of the survey questions. In Nand, we looked at, during the desktop and the interviews, we looked at 56 non-profit and for-profit organizations, and we shortlisted Les Moutons de l'Est, which is eco-grassing of sheep for hire, right? And so our conclusion is relatively extensive. So I have worked or had several conversations with the team, my team, that have been working locally across these 3 front-runner cities. And there are actually several challenges. And I do think that at this point we have critical mass of research findings that allow us to draw some conclusions. So I will share those conclusions with you. One of the conclusions is that most citizens are interested in MBS that do not have a proven business model and do not generate profit. So, you know, green recreational areas, a biking path, a walking path, a playground, these kind of MBS solutions in the green corridors, a river. So MBS solutions defined in a, how can you say, almost equated to nature, but as it is in a cityscape, they are transformed to MBS solutions because these are deliberate renaturing initiatives that are funded with public money. The green MBS companies, but for the MBS companies, what we see is that they are motivated by normal for-profit generation. So they rely on business cases with a steady revenue flow, etc. So what we did was we said, okay, where can we find a solidarity economy component in this particular rather difficult landscape, where you have on the one hand citizens that value MBS solutions that are publicly funded highest, and on the other hand you have the successful MBS companies that we have identified. They actually rely on normal for-profit motivation or business models, right? And what we have seen is that to incentivize the motivation, the for-profit generating motivation, there are non-profit intermediaries that play an enabling role through dialogue and collaboration on social, cultural, and economic activities. So you have to imagine that there is a, how can you say, a layer of organizations that operate on more or less solidarity economy, how can you say, criteria. And these organizations are critical to connecting the MBS companies with the citizens. So that's why we call them intermediaries. And they are at the nexus of trustful long-term relationships between private, public, and civic organizations that are interested in developing MBS solutions in urban areas. And we have an example here, Les Escoliers from Nantes, which is an example of a non-profit intermediary that connects citizens and businesses in the MBS realm. However, what we did uncover is that many of these intermediaries, they are actually not in the solidarity economy, not in the pure solidarity economy, because they actually rely on funding from public sector and philanthropies. So at this point, it is a little bit discerning, because even though we have looked at probably 150 MBS solution providers or companies across the 3 front-runner cities, profit generation still seems to be the strongest business proposition for these companies, and that profit generation is rather traditional. So it is selling an MBS solution to a municipality, for instance, or to a corporate client or someone else. So we have not found, okay, so it is difficult to find and measure MBS organizations that are entirely citizen-driven and deliver and finance MBS solutions. Successful MBS solution providers need a proven profit-generating business case. And right now, that business case looks quite traditional, to be honest. Citizens are attracted to MBS solutions that are delivered and financed primarily by the public sector. So that is with taxpayers' money. And then a last slide is there are other ways of financing public goods and services, including delivering and financing MBS. But these would probably not be within the realm of the solidarity economy. So I think what one could do is, oh, now it doesn't want to, here we go. So I think what one could do is to look at MBS solutions that are not grounded in the particular cities. Here I'm thinking of ESG quota trading, for instance. I mean, that could be a solidarity economy tool, but it is not grounded in any one or fixated in any one city. Yeah, so, you know, Søren, you're welcome to chip in here. Could you put on your screen, please? Thanks. So Søren and I, we talked about, you know, what about the coffee, the little coffee wagon, you know, the scooter that has a coffee outlet. But that also has a profit-generating business case. They sell coffee. That generates a revenue flow. And also, Søren and I said we could question to what extent that qualifies as an MBS solution. So the companies that we looked at, the almost 150 companies that we looked at, they do not include such a coffee trailer. Only to the extent that it has some component of MBS. For instance, there was one coffee trailer that used the coffee waste for, you know, fertilizers, plant fertilizer. Then it doubles as an MBS solution. So it is not clear cut, our results. I wish we could do something to say that we have found loads of evidence of really strong business propositions of solidarity economy, but we haven't. Søren, please help me. I feel as if I'm paddling here.
Louise,
no, but I think the overall conclusion is
5 minutes to conclude. Okay.
The overall conclusion is, as you mentioned, Louise. So based on the material that we have right now, that I would fully agree. That's the conclusion. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? Do we have time for that?
Yeah, the idea is to do the questions in the end. So
okay.
I hope, I think it will be interesting to cross the interventions. So please save your questions, or you can add some questions in the chat, and we can interact with Louise directly.
Yeah. I was thinking, is there any questions specifically to this? Because I agree with you, Gonzalo. It would be interesting to kind of see what are the overall conclusions that we can draw from the different presentations, but is there anything specific to,
so
to
one
our
question for clarifications?
Clarifications, exactly.
Okay, I have one question. Was there a dialogue between between you and the research that you did and the citizens that are developing these solutions? Is there a moment where this was discussed? Maybe the citizens have some solutions.
I think, you know, our survey captures there is the possibility to offer advice or recommend solutions, and the surveys have been translated to local language, and they are on a tablet, and the person who's conducting the survey, it's a real person, and they have been trained to have that kind of dialogue with the citizen, because we are asking some more open-ended questions that invite for a dialogue.
Okay. Very well, thank you. So I think we can move to the next presentation. The next presentation will be by Natalie Valle. She's also here with us. Hello, Natalie. Nice to meet you. So Natalie, she is co-promoter of our partner, the University of Antwerp, where she is a professor and researcher. She is an expert in applied economics in general, and she's been conducting research on societal awareness and design in the research group of the design sciences faculty. So with a large experience on alternative economies, Natalie will bring us the insight on a specific methodology, the Sroe. We are looking forward to listen to you as experts on economic impacts, and especially in URBiNAT, you'll be in charge of the economic impacts of nature-based solutions. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mohammed, can you share the PowerPoint presentation that we made?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I'll use that time just to say that we just actually have recently started with exploring the way in which we can measure the socioeconomic impact of nature-based solutions, because we only started in January. Okay. So as you can see, the title is Exploring Ways to Measure the Social Economic Impact of Nature-Based Solutions. And what we find as a kind of measurement is the social return on investment, which is then in abbreviation SROE. Let us first, by means of the first slide, recapitulate the main research question of our work package. So when you look at the first slide, thank you, Mohammed, you can see that actually the main research question was, what is the socio-economic impact of urban projects, and specifically of nature-based solution projects that are then combined in a so-called joint healthy corridor, on the regeneration of deprived neighborhoods. So actually it was a question on how can we assess this impact, with what kind of concept, with what kind of instrument. We had, however, two special concerns. The first one is that when assessing that socioeconomic impact, we want to include the spatial features of the nature-based solution to the fullest. So in that sense, we also want to have a kind of assessment of the socioeconomic impact of, for example, the architectural concept, the architectural design on itself, the used materials, but also the design process, the construction process, and of course also the investment. So that this spatial element, how can we include it in that assessment? And the second specific point of attention is of course important for this seminar, is how can we also include and consider the role and activities of social and solidarist economy organization who are active in the nature-based solution. There we have a little conceptual difference with Louise, because the nature-based solutions, we see it as a kind of thing on itself, and we are mainly interested in, of course, the management of a nature-based solution, but that is done by means of a network. And in that network, we have profit organizations, non-profit organizations, public ones, and social and solidarist economy organizations. So in that sense, the SSE organizations are very important partners in the management. And the main issue is then, of course, who is going to put his or her model on the management of the network of the nature-based solution. Is it more a social and solidarist economy model? Is it a market model? Is it something else? Okay. This raises a question reflected on the next slide of our presentation. So the question was actually, in what way or to what extent can we actually find answers to that questions of how can we, let's say, measure that type of impact. And so we consulted the several disciplines of economics and also subdisciplines like management, strategic management, public management, and also management control. And so in that discipline, we actually see that mostly there is a use of what we call the traditional method used to assess a socioeconomic impact of any economic activity, also of urban projects and nature-based solution products. And there we see that the traditional method is mainly what we call the return on investment. It's actually a kind of metric, it's a kind of calculation that is, let's say, generally recognized by traditional economists. And I will immediately say, what are then traditional economists? And you will see that there we have a kind of ideological influence and ideological rationale. Now, the return on investment relates actually, just to put it briefly, the financial returns, the income to the financial costs. Thus, the return on investment measures what we call the relative profitability, not the absolute profitability. But by only and solely taking the monetary consequences of an economic activity into consideration, we have to say that return on investment is actually a limited assessment. Only those aspects of the economic activity that can be expressed in monetary terms are taken into consideration. And all the other things are seen as non-existing, are seen as having no economic value. So it's a very narrow definition of economy. So, and finally, I want to emphasize that the return on investment is very highly influenced by the neoclassical or neoliberal ideology, as Beatrice said, the capitalist ideology within the discipline of economics. It's the ideology where there is the ideal of the free market. The free market is the only way how we can maximize the returns for one specific type of economic actor, being the investors of capital. So the investors of labor are not taken into consideration. It's only the investors of capital, and they should have a return. And that return is, of course, the profit. So in that sense, of course, it makes also sense that only monetary aspects are taken into consideration, because they are needed to calculate actually, of course, the profit. So I think that's a very important element to mention. This raises a next question, which is also seen on the next slide of the presentation. This raises the question, is the return on investment actually an appropriate method or indicator to measure then the socioeconomic impact of urban regeneration projects like nature-based solutions, which are mainly combinations of public and social and solidarist economy projects? Well, why is that important, and why should we ask this question? Because it's not that self-evident. Because first of all, the regeneration, which is the regeneration impact and the regeneration or renewal and improvement of a neighborhood, in order to revitalize that area as perceived in a material and mental way by inhabitants, but also users and visitors, cannot entirely be expressed in monetary terms, let alone in only objective data. So it's highly subjective as well. For example, it also concerns the renewal and improvement of feelings of belonging to a part of a city, for example, by co-creation and by participation, a feeling of being respected, a feeling of being happy. And that is, of course, very difficult to express in monetary terms. So in that sense, we can say that regeneration and the regeneration impacts is a concept that is highly complex, and it is not completely covered by that return on investment measure. Secondly, and as very common within public and social and solidarist economy activities, especially the revenues of these activities are seldom or even not at all expressed in monetary terms, because you do not really buy necessarily products and services on the market where you pay a price for. So mostly the revenues are absent in then if you would take the return on investment. And that's of course a huge problem, because then nature-based solutions, and you measure the impact, is only then in terms of it costs. It has even not any revenue at all, which is of course a very problematic thing. And finally, the underlying ideological rationale of a nature-based solution is quite different, certainly when considering the social and solidarist economy participants in the sector, that has its own objectives in which profitability is not at all a central key element. So we are not interested in the profitability as expressed in return on investment. So in short, the return on investment is not an appropriate measure because it neglects and underestimates the real and the economic realities in broad sense that lack an explicit monetary value. For example, also the economic learning effects and personal growth by, for example, co-participation. This brings us to the next question. So you see, we build up the presentation in subsequent questions that we want to ask ourselves, which are, of course, very important now at the start of this work package. Does the literature then suggest an alternative or an adapted measurement? Yes, it does. So already for quite some time, we see the emergence of the so-called social return on investment within literature, but also within practice, by means of an alternative. This social return on investment, and I think it's important to emphasize this, has mainly been suggested and elaborated by social profit organizations, amongst which also the social and solidarist economy organizations, and also public organizations that were urged in the early 80s to legitimize their reasons of existence to the neoclassical inspired policymakers that became actually in power around the whole world. And so it was more a matter of, we have to prove that our non-profit and public activities do have an economic performance, do have an added value, because otherwise they were threatened to be privatized. So I want to emphasize that actually the coming about of the social return on investment is a rather defensive but a vital assessment in a very dominant neoclassical economic world order. Thus, it is also an instrument that still needs to meet this type of economic world logic. That is very strange, because despite of a lot of crisis since the 50s last century, and also despite Corona, so we have so many incidents that show that actually the neoclassical model, the free market model, has reached its limits. Still, we see that even Corona has not really changed that idea. So it's really a kind of idea that is very difficult to change. So we have to make sure that the neoclassical economic world logic, although it's trembling, it is not really falling. And we have to take that into consideration when developing the SROE. In general terms, we can say that the social return on investment tries to make non-monetary impacts and also revenues visible. So it looks very often in creative ways for proxies, and mostly it concerns also cost savings that can be done. For example, thanks to a project that invests in public water cleaning systems, for instance, families can save on their medical treatment budget as they are less ill, and so they can use it for something else that increases the value of their lives. Or they can save on the food budget as they can eat the fish in the pools, and thus they can develop themselves, they can emancipate themselves. The social return on investment also appreciates and incorporates very explicitly process-related benefits in the assessment. And some people call it in literature the mental and the psychological revenues for all stakeholders involved. For instance, thanks to a co-creation process, users can enjoy a kind of personal growth, and they feel themselves again, or in a more intense way, affiliated with society, which motivates them, which gives them a kind of contribution to society that is important. So the social return on investment is as such a very interesting one. Now, what does it imply in particularly? And this is of course a kind of summary we have made, because answering all these questions, and mainly also answering the question, what is the social return on investment, has led to two working papers that we have written within the work package 5.4, in which we have summarized all the literature study, and also where we have described in large what this social return on investment up until now really implies. Actually, to put it short, we have two major activities that are realized in the social return on investment. First of all, there is the realization of what they call in literature the SROE analysis. And actually that has to do with a process of 6 steps in which features of a certain economic activity, or for example, a nature-based solution, is inventoried, described, and evaluated by the different stakeholders involved. So it's not only inhabitants and users, but also financing and so on. So all the stakeholders of the network will try to evaluate that. And therefore they use techniques such as interviews, focus group debates, observation. So as such, you could say that actually the SROE analysis resembles very much doing social research on itself.
5 minutes, please.
Yes, then we have the gradual calculation of the SROE metric, means that during these 6 steps, we also try to monetize in some kind of way the returns. So as I already illustrated before, so that actually in some kind of way we can generate a metric that represent that impact. Taken together, the SROE visualizes actually the chain of subsequent and interactive effects and transformations made by all stakeholders. So actually it is the intention that the SROE creates insight into what they call the theory of change. It's a kind of total impact, I must say, because I see suddenly a reaction, but I will not have to answer it immediately. So it's a kind of total impact during the life cycle initiative, which is illustrated in the next slide, and then I can come to the last one. So you here see that actually it's the chain of transformation. So you have the situation before, the situation during, and of course the situation at the end. And it's a kind of gradual socio-economic impact. This brings me to the last slide. Is the social return on investment then already a hands-on and well elaborated or documented new concept and assessment method that we can use for the urban regeneration projects and nature-based solutions in particular? Well, it is not quite so. So there is still some work to do, and that is what we will do also in our work package. So an elaborated, more generic SROE assessment method is still under construction. So in literature, you find a lot of case studies, a lot of pilot studies where they exchange inductive lessons learned from interesting cases, and we will do the same actually mainly from the front runner cities within URBiNAT. The tailor-made case study nature of this case study research, of course, makes the impact comparisons between initiatives very difficult. So actually you can describe intra-evolutions. Is the social economic impact of a certain nature-based solution increasing or decreasing over time? That is possible, but not comparing nature-based solution 1 with nature-based solution 2. And that creates a lot of frustration of policymakers because they want to compare that. And that is not yet possible at present. And then the specific social return on investment assessment for nature-based solutions, including also those with a high involvement of social and solidarist economy organization, is actually at present absent. So we will develop as such an SROE application or an instrument to assess that socioeconomic impact of these different types of nature-based solutions in URBiNAT. And so we will start now in June based on the literature study presented in 2 working papers. We have a 3rd working paper in which we see what is already collected as data and what has already happened in these case studies of URBiNAT. So we will not have double work. And then we will create an instrument, the instrument that will be presented to the consortium in September, and then will be applied subsequently in all the frontrunner cities, and that will lead to lessons learned and the development of a SROE instrument for nature-based solution. So that was it.
Thank you, Natalie. I don't know if there is one question for clarifications to Natalie. Yes, Louise.
Thank you. Hi, Natalie. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I enjoyed that. Our challenge, I mean, first of all, in our work package, we have to find bankable, companies, MBS companies, and look at their business propositions and value creation. It is not, solidarity economy would be part of that, but it is not the main focus of work package 7. The main focus is to identify marketable, bankable MBS solutions. So do you have examples, Natalie, of what you would call marketable, bankable MBS companies that are built on solidarity economy?
Yes, but it all depends on what you see as bankable, because actually the central element is the nature-based solution, and each nature-based solution is bankable. It only depends on how, for example, you measure that nature-based solution and measure the impact. So if you use, for example, the social return on investment for the nature-based solution and to measure the impact, actually each nature-based solution will come in some kind of way bankable, will become something that you can measure in terms of income and outcome and revenues and so on. So I think it's, how shall I say, it depends upon how you look at the nature-based solution. And what is for me important is that there does not exist, according to me, the nature-based solution company. There only exist nature-based solution projects. And then the main question is, how can we manage that? And you can manage a nature-based solutions from the free market model, but you can manage as well from the social and solidarist economy or the public management. So the management model is very important. And what we try to do is when you use a social and solidarist economy model, then we will try by means of the SROE, make it also a bit more tangible, bankable, because you can say these are the costs, but these are the revenues that you have. Is that a bit clear, Louise?
Yeah, I liked your last, these are the revenues you have. So what I was just saying, does that mean that the a green recreational area funded by the local city government is a solidarity economy project because it reduces health expenses of the government, because people move, maybe they get fresh air, maybe some people start playing football, you know, so they have, you know, and maybe you can have school children come to the park and study insects, or have a little community garden. So you also reduce mental health expenses and so on. I mean, my challenge with this is that savings are not revenue. I agree with you, Natalie. I wish the world was different.
Well,
I do not.
how can we do so? Savings are very important revenues.
No, they
let's
I don't know of a single government, because you can't.
The government is something else. In economy, savings are very important because it creates income that you can use for something else. But perhaps now the discussion goes.
The park, but tell me, the
sorry,
park
Louise.
the park does not create
to
revenue. That is a problem. It creates savings, but it does not create revenue. It only creates a public sector cost in terms of building the park and maintaining the park. Now, I like parks, you know, so I'm not against parks. I love parks.
I fully agree, but I mean, I think it's perhaps we can discuss it later on.
Yes, I think we need to go to the next speaker. Thank you. I think we will have here a good discussion. Please save your questions and ideas. It will be great to discuss later. Okay, so now we move to the next speaker, who is Knud Erik. Knud Erik, he's Hilding Hannen. Sorry, Knud. Knud Erik is our leader of the work package related with the citizens engagement, and he is the partner who is leading also the DTI partnership with URBiNAT. Knud Erik, he has been, Knud Erik is an international marketing and senior specialist in the Center of Innovational Digital Transformation, Production and Innovation Division of the Danish Technological Institute of Denmark. So, Knud Erik, you will bring your insight with the social entrepreneurship for increased participation and improved employability, putting the focus on the Nordic countries. So the floor is yours. Thank you for your availability.
Thank you, Gonzalo. I'll share my screen. So, can everybody see my presentation?
Yes, thank you.
So the research that I'll be presenting relates to a project that was conducted with Høje Taastrup, which is one of the cities in URBiNAT, but also two Swedish cities, Helsingborg and Landskrona. Now, all three cities are dealing with challenges of having socially deprived city areas where they have vast socioeconomic challenges relating both to unemployment, crime, and health issues. And all three wanted a project to examine the opportunities they had in using entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship to address these problems. So the cities asked us to do a case-based study based on primarily cases from Scandinavia. And in order to help them generate and develop strategies for how they could integrate and introduce entrepreneurship strategies to help people in the deprived areas battle the challenges they were facing. So with the CDs, we analyzed some 55 possible cases, and they helped us prioritize 24 of these cases that we were then developing more in-depth analysis of, in order to give them some inspiration for the development strategies that they were developing. What we found was applications mainly in relation to relationship building between generations or ethnicities. This could be both between young and old, but also between people of foreign characteristics with people with a local national ethnicity. We also found local service development, such as cafes, garden work, repair work, kitchen, canteen work, that were based on a social enterprise model. We found area regeneration and development activities in different settings, sometimes through youth work, sometimes through youth training. We found school outreach and collaborative activities that addressed the issues of bringing societal parts together in a much more homogeneous way. And we found job placement and training for specific career development activities also. A couple of examples. So I don't know if people have heard of change makers, but change makers is a global activity that helps educate young people and to become social entrepreneurs. So what's offered here is both online training to learn how to organize your social company or organization or activity. You can generate networks through the online community of the change makers in order to bring it together different agents that can help you and actually operationalize your idea. And the trainers who are active or educators who are active help them create the networks and resources that actually in many cases it can't move mountains, but it can certainly move great visions to realization of these ideas. And the result has been many social events and also small as well as larger enterprises, and in many different locations throughout the world. It's all built on the philosophy of try it, do it, and then build it. So it's very much based on a design thinking approach, and seems to have generated quite a bit of success. A small example is from Helsingborg. Here, the city wanted to encourage the citizens to take part in the redevelopment of the city. And here, in particular, a certain area of the city called the Pier. And citizens were offered a small space, 10 times 10 meters, and money, small money, in terms of 10,000 Swedish kroners, to create an interactive space that would encourage other citizens to come down and experience the site and experience the cultural happenings that were taking part there. Again, this has created many applications, but not only that, it has animated citizens in Helsingborg to try other and more and bigger things. So it's led to people going from generating such a space to generating a theater piece, or generating a small company, or creating an educational path for themselves. So it's a way of starting people off on a new path. Then we have the School of the Future example, which is from Høje Taastrup. This is built on the requirement to bring school closer to the rest of the society through a co-development process. And this is meant to help students and pupils to learn based on societal problems, and also teach them how to do outreach and relationship building with other societal actors. And it's created a pedagogical approach which is still under development, and combines what I would call STEAM. Many people know STEM already, but combined with arts, it becomes STEAM, with entrepreneurship and problem solving. Now, there's no monetary aspect in this, but there is a huge societal benefit in terms of the learning across the different parts of the society in Høje Taastrup. And it's going to be exciting to watch and experience how this School of the Future will evolve in Høje Taastrup. The last example is cycling without age. I've brought this example on numerous occasions in URBiNAT, simply because it allows elderly to experience nature in a way they thought never possible anymore, simply because their mobility is being taken away from them. Now, it also allows people who like to come out and exercise to exercise in the sense that they cycle people about. Now, this is definitely a monetary experience, so it's developing revenues, and it's also generating return on investment for the many people in terms of the 1.5 million elderly that's been served over the years since its start in 2012. This is now active in 50 countries from its beginning in Denmark. So, no, not all can learn to become entrepreneurs, but all can become better masters of their own destiny. And in supporting that, it takes trust, time, and timing. So the timing has got to be right. And these social entrepreneurs tackle imbalances, injustices in societies. And that's where the social return on investment really gets shown. And they do that by cleverly mobilizing in numbers. So by mobilizing lots of people with the same vision, this really can take off, and has done so in several such projects. That's what I had, Gonzalo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Knut Erik. I don't know if there is one question for clarifications with Knut Erik. No? Okay, it was very clear. Thank you. So we'll move to Marco Acri, Marco is our leader of the work package 2 on the living labs. So he's focused on the activities that are implemented in the cities. Marco is a conservation architect with specializations in urban regeneration. He is a researcher and a professor at the University of Nova Gorica, and he's coordinating the Cultural Heritage Study Doctoral Program and international cooperation in the field of heritage. He's visiting professor in several universities, and he's now interested in built heritage regeneration through circular economy and nature-based solutions, and this will be the topic that he will address us today. So thank you, Marco, for your participation. We are looking forward to hear you. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonzalo, and thanks to all of the members of the organizing committee of this set of webinars. I'm really glad to be part of that. While sharing my screen, I will be introducing to you that I will be talking about an example from a project that was going in parallel with URBiNAT, which is named Click. I think you do see my slide, isn't it? Because I'm trying to see that. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, it's a project named Click. It's an Horizon 2020 project that started some months before, I would say 1 year before URBiNAT, and is focused on the circular models leveraging investments in cultural heritage adaptive reuse. Let me go to the
Marco, can you show us the full screen?
Yeah, I hope you see that. Is it? Okay, and what I will be talking to you was the case study of Rijeka, which was our attempt in the Click project to merge the concepts of circular economy as applied to cultural heritage adaptive reuse and the concept of historic urban landscape. So how in heritage studies, and I'm pretty much convinced that when we talk about heritage in Europe, we refer to most of our territory. So in European cities at least, but this is probably common for many other locations worldwide. When we talk about urban regeneration, we do also refer to heritage. This is not important for me to stress the fact that this presentation is, of course, organized by me in this specific case, but I was carrying out this activity and research with my colleagues, Maja Debevec and Sasha Dobric from my university, but of course, some precious contributions were given from other partners of Click, as of course the city of Rijeka, which was partner, the ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability, ISHEC, a business school, and IRIS CNR, which is the leader of the project Click. First of all, I mean, the main insights were coming from the what is circular economy for us, especially regarding cultural heritage. Of course, it's our conviction that conservation and the restoration doctrine have been referring to actually what the principles of circular economy since ever, because heritage is actually, at least what is coming to us today, is the result of a very intensive and historic and rooted practice of efficiency and efficacy in using local materials and local resources. So when we do perform heritage conservation works, we very much count on the principles of circular economy, and this is must be considered as achieved. Of course, when we were talking about heritage, we were referring to resilience, retrofitting, of course. In our case, was very much important the concept of integrity and authenticity, or reuse and rescaling, but there was also, of course, a lot of social economy inside, like this community, collectivity engagement, or simply awareness. I stress very much on the fact that community is not really, I mean, our convention. We talk more about collectivity, and then, of course, the destination of cultural heritage. So the multifunctionality, which is, I mean, how we are performing the circular economy in terms of reuse of assets. when I deal with integrity and authenticity, that's very important in our case, not because we are conservationist or heritage person, but because this is really the added value that we can offer in our contexts today. So looking at the authenticity and integrity is probably our unique form to be different, I mean, and to keep our, let's say, local, what we usually say, identity. Examples here that I usually do of circular economy and cultural heritage. The first one is very important, I think, for us because it's an example of a local organization in Amsterdam, which is called Pakhuis de Zwiger, which is beyond the fact that it's hosted in a retrofitted building, so fully zero impact on the environment. It became extremely important at the local level, and I refer probably to this example that was made before me on the I don't remember exactly how it was called, but Change Makers, yes. It's an organization that is offering every night, I mean, a debate opportunity for all the citizens on specific topics, and became so important that the city of Amsterdam took it as a sort of local consultant organizations for organizing local debates on how the city should develop. Then, of course, examples of retrofitting as well as authenticity and integrity preservation. But then we go to smaller scales, the use of objects and materials that are usually thrown away, or the practice of maintaining, which is unfortunately almost lost in many European contexts. And of course, objects in use, and this is quite common in URBiNAT. And I would say that's extremely important also, being capable of reinventing some places like this fortification in the Netherlands that was converted into a sort of interpretation center for geography. I will not stop on these schemes, which is the difference between linear economy and circular economy. Of course, in the circular economy, we started several years ago by the simple reuse, repair, and recycle. We have many more forms of this circular economy, I would say, starting from refuse. So deciding not to purchase or transform materials to the full recovery. And this, the problem in Click was how to, put all these inputs from the circular economy, which is usually intended in small objects or buildings retrofitting and I say conservation, to a more larger scale. So how this could be actually included in a governance system at territorial level. And of course, we were investigating, this is thanks to the work carried out by Gillian Foster from the Technical University of Vienna. Actually, we came out with a lot of ideas that, by the way, we are also performing partly in URBiNAT, which is starting from the design phase, so how the transformation is planned, which is, as an example, deciding not to use materials that are not local, to the overall process of dismantling buildings or the built environment, to the rehabilitation, and so the decision on how to change the built environment in a form or another. The idea, the capacity, to perform and to give multifunctional reuses and 24 hours also reuses of the built heritage assets, and then the purpose, the demolition, and then how the circle is continuing. Why I'm taking Rijeka? Well, Rijeka, first of all, was our local partner, but in our perspective was probably offering the best conditions to show that adaptive reuse of cultural heritage and as urban regeneration, so the concept of historic urban landscape, which is for the non-heritage person, an approach that was introduced mostly for World Heritage sites, but then was extended to in general cultural heritage sites, which is a form of grasping all the cultural forms that in urban contexts we may preserve to give a sort of new life to these contexts. The city of Rijeka, of course, has a very interesting development because it's not only, it has a very strong, I would say, then socialist imprint. In such a way, could have been also a very good case studies for URBiNAT. It's on the water, so it has a very nice waterfront in a beautiful context in the northern part of Croatia. And if we look at its potentials, it's an exceptional overlapping of different historic and cultural layers. It was in the year of ECOC, so Cultural Capital 2020, so preparing to organize a lot of cultural events. And then, and this is important also for us, the fact that socialist architecture and urbanism was offering opportunities for a new way of conceiving public spaces. The city, when we applied the city of Rijeka to the CLIC project, we were asked to select some objects. And these objects were these three, I mean, in the spatial system of Rijeka. So we have the Galeb, which is a ship, Rehab, which was a former factory, textile factory converted into a social center, and then Energana, which was a sort of industrial part of the city where energy and paper was produced at the beginning of the city river. These are the three objects, and our idea was to understand how to connect these three objects in our attempt to merge the circular economy application on this single asset to a larger context, so the historic urban landscape. So going from this, the Rehab Center that was already converted into this social incubator, let's call it, to the Galeb ship here on the waterfront, which was extremely important international, well, national monument, because it was the place where the former president, Marshal Tito of the former Yugoslavia, was hosting his important meetings with the heads of states through, I mean, the rest of the city. So, for example, the rivers and the context there, which is, as you may see, very chaotic and it's not really human-centered, we will say. We performed different steps, of course, of participation. One of the first was, and this is important for us because it's somehow mutuating or introducing something that was already adopted in URBiNAT, which is the cultural mapping. This cultural mapping was adopting the perception mapping approach, which is quite typical in the historic urban landscape processes, that is based on asking citizens of what they would preserve of the city in terms of cultural assets. So from all the senses, the 5 senses, what they would keep. And this gave a lot of information about how we could actually organize the meetings after with the local stakeholders. The priorities, of course, were identifying cultural preservation as well as inner city reuse, regeneration of some of the important assets of the city, like the inner rivers and canals, improvement of the greener areas, and then better investments of the cultural capital of Rijeka. This took us to a creation of an action planning that was somehow envisioning maybe a parallel way of understanding of how the city could develop in the future, and from that define some, or for that, to achieve this vision, define the general objectives and the specific objectives, and then slowly the associated actions. I will not show you, all the action plan, but this is more or less the 4 axes that we defined. Reusing the Riječina, which is the water canal, well, actually the river in the city center, the revitalization of the waterfront, the improvement and the preservation of the historic cultural heritage, and then improving the accessibility and reducing pollution. And we had to merge these ideas with the concepts of the circular economy. So how, for example, cleaning and reusing the Riecina River could be done through the circular economy, as for example, using new materials from recycling, producing green paths and parks, introducing phytodepurration solutions, reusing existing buildings. These were just some of the questions that were at the base of our discussion at the beginning of the process. And it came out, I mean, and this was lucky enough for us to have URBiNAT in parallel, that the area identified by the citizens and by the stakeholders was the area of the inner center that, by some coincidences, was offering a sort of corridor. And so we, I mean, given that URBiNAT was considered by the European Union as well as a sort of sister project of CLIC, coming from the same agency, we call that a sort of potential cultural corridor of the city of Rijeka. That was somehow moving from one of the sides of the banks of the river, coming back from the other, on the other bank of the river, and then up to the waterfront. And it came out applying the principles of the circular economy, and I will maybe be very fast on that later, that it was very similar to the common pool resources offering, I mean, a space that was somehow matching the 8 principles for managing the commons as in the Elinor Ostrom theory. This is a theory that was already introduced in the last webinar last week, so I will not insist on that, but if you see, I mean, the conditions is having boundaries of users as resource which are clear, congruence between benefits and costs, possibility to make own rules, and in fact what we wanted to do was to apply in this specific corridor the principles of circular economy, and then graduated sanctions, of course the participation of the local authority, and so on and so forth. We started this process with a few stakeholders, and we ended, well actually it's not ended, with many more. So we mapped all these stakeholders. Unfortunately, not all of them, due to the COVID pandemics, could not be included, but we have a very clear picture of the people that could help us beyond, I mean, the citizens' participation.
Marco, 3 minutes to conclude, okay?
3 minutes. These are the examples of the maps we produced, I mean, to come to that point. And some ideas coming from the catalog we had of circular economy at local spaces. So examples also from Porto, materials reuse, sharing and solidarity economy, I mean, from the practice that we all know, but of course including car sharing, car mobility, time bank, etc. Examples here you see from URBiNAT, because we were using similarly the thematic box, and so on and so forth. Of course, inspired also by the existing practices in the city of Rijeka, like this urban séparé, which is about reusing materials to give a new furniture to the city center, as well as this how it's called that? I'm not translating. I mean, this pocket parks reproduction. And the way we came to that was about the process called urban seeding, which was organized with the University of Rijeka, with different groups of young professionals and students, with an interdisciplinary composition of groups that were somehow in a situational form learning in the city center, finding out ideas that could have been easily replicable in all parts of the city, low cost, and of course aligned with the circular economy. Some of the examples are showed here, and you may see that they come from the chip chop game of the kids. So reapplying these traditional games, the book exchange, the art workshops. It was in one of the part of the city, as well as with very low cost, I mean, the making of the facades of the buildings, or in the waterfront, as you may see here, the flea market, the reuse, the export brand, the relighting of spots of the city. And we came to a point also to somehow assess these proposals. For example, this proposal made by this specific group on the waterfront was assessed in this specific way. So feasibility of implementation, ease of implementation, cost of implementation, circular economy attendance, cultural heritage respect, and then impact in terms of visibility and use, and impact in terms of ease of replication, with a very simple scaling form that was translated, and this I will not present here, into a decision support system mechanism that was offered then to the city of Rijeka as a sort of governance tool for the coordination of these specific initiatives. This is all described in a paper that you may find in the sustainability in this specific issue. And this is where I stop. And I thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Marco, for this very nice presentation on a project that has been always, that URBiNAT has been always following by your hand, but there are very, very similar issues as you point out. So let's learn more about CLIC. Thank you. I suggest that we do, I don't know if you have one clarification question to Marco, and then I suggest that we do a short break of 5 minutes, maybe not so much. Any question to Marco? Okay, so let's do a short break, short coffee break, if you have coffee around, and then we will start the discussion with Milena. Okay, thank you. So 5 minutes and we'll be here again. Thank you. Okay, I think we are with the 5 minutes. I hope everyone is already around. Beatriz, I think Natalie. Okay, I'm Milena. Natalie. Knut is also here. Marco, are you there? And Louise, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Marco? Hello?
Yes, do you hear me?
Okay, great.
Okay, sorry, I tried to change my headset.
Okay, thank you. So I think we are all here now. So we'll start the discussion. I think we had very nice 4 complementary presentations. I would say that we have the cycle of co-creation. So we have the design issues with the entrepreneurship proposal from Knut. We have the circular economy process by Marco Acri. We have the social return investment as the impact of the NBS, and we have the results approach on the market assessment and business case. So I think we have here a very complementary approach that we need to discuss, and it's very good that we can do it also in the frame of URBiNAT. And I'll give the floor to Milena to address the discussion and put some questions. Hi, Milena. Milena is our local partner from Sofia. She's also following the discussions on urban regeneration. She's an architect from the University of Sofia. And I think it will be interesting also to make the bridge with what the cities are doing. So let's hear also your comments. Thank you, Milena. We cannot hear you, Milena. We cannot hear you.
Thank you very much for inviting me and offering the challenge to participate in this interdisciplinary dialogue because I personally, as Musa already mentioned, I come from a spatial planning perspective. And it was very interesting to me to open these interdisciplinary perspectives of the social and solidarity NBSs. By the way, it was the first time when I heard about the social and solidarity economy, being an architect and urban planner 10 years ago. So I was constantly thinking about this concept, but actually URBiNAT was the occasion of bringing the opportunity to participate in the Living Lab in Sofia. So it was very impressive, this complementary mentality of the presentations. And the first, try to make a cross-section was the concept of what is social and solidarity NBS. And I think it's different on how you look at it. It was mentioned by several participants, but it's also interesting how citizens appropriate these solutions when we go on ground and participate in the workshops. I feel that, and I have this feeling that there might be a difference from citizens' perceptions on NBSs from city to city. So maybe it's the level of social development, but it is mainly the local culture. And the local culture is in the heart of how we perceive NBSs, how we communicate them, how we look on them as researchers, and how we intermediate them and expect to be intermediated. And it's also, again, the readiness to anticipate innovations. So maybe my first questions to the panelists today will be, how do you perceive culture at the core of defining social and solidarity NBS? So maybe we'll follow the round of the presentations. Maybe Luis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, I mean, of course, culture plays a role. So for instance, I have done a lot of work in the US, and because they do not have as extensive a welfare state as we have certainly in Northern Europe, what you see is a lot of voluntarism, you know, philanthropies, non-profits, organizations that will go in and fill the void that of the lack of a welfare state. So they will provide many of the goods and services that, at least in Northern Europe, are provided by the welfare state. So in that way, you can say that this is, to a very large extent, influenced by the culture of the place or by the political system of the place and the political inclinations of a place, right? So I think that is absolutely true. As I touched upon with Natalie's presentation, I think, and by the way, I'm currently working on a academic paper with the two Indian, you know, from India people on ESG quota trading. So the whole idea of turning environmental social governance projects or investments, try to commodify them and trade them globally in order to incentivize better investment or better flow of capital to ESG investments, right? So I'm pro this. I just think that, you know, except if we all suddenly turn our back to the whole notion of money as a unit of exchange and return on investment, etc., then these are the guiding principles of our economic society, our global economic society. So maybe finding a way to trade ESG quota would be a good alternative, because you're operating within the existing traditional system, but you're trying to achieve good and help environmental social governance investments from capital. I think it's very tricky. You have to acknowledge and operate within the system, and savings do not equate revenue. They do not. I'm an economist. I mean, it may be in a different world if we decided to blow up capitalism, which, you know, I would love to do. But in this current work, you cannot, because revenue can be invested. savings cannot be invested. Savings are good, but it's not revenue, and you can't invest it because it doesn't exist. Because the problem is, you can say we're making savings, but then we're also spending a hell of a lot more. So for instance, let's say we do a green recreational park and we save 2 million euros a year in health expenses. But at the same time, we're spending 200 million more a year in curing illnesses that 10 or 20 years ago couldn't be cured. And we're also eating badly and becoming obese and blah, blah, blah. We have all these lifestyle illnesses that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago. So we're spending more money, and whatever we're saving doesn't mean that we have more money to spend.
Thank you, Louise. Let's hear Natalie also.
Yes, I fully disagree with it. And I'm an economist as well, but there is no one type of economist. But no.
Okay, good.
So let me come back to the actual question. So I think it's an interesting one, how culture can have an influence. I think, yes, culture is a very important one as a contextual variable because it influences our value system in society. And that value system will have its consequences for how we organize the political aspects of our society, the economic aspects, and so on. So in that sense, I think it's very important, but it's also important to emphasize culture as a multi-phased concept. There's not one culture, and the United States has not one culture. We have seen it now also in Black Lives Matter and so on. So we have all kinds of subcultures and all kinds of conflicts between value systems. And it's also very dynamic, so it changes over time. If you look at the generations in '68 in the United States, the hippies, they had a completely different value system, although they were American, than, for example, nowadays. So I think, yes, it is important to consider the cultural background of our society in order to understand why we have certain projects, why we have certain nature-based solutions, whether we are in favor or not of it. So in that sense, I think it's a very important one. When it comes to economics, I would say that according to the neoclassical and neoliberal idea, we can say that monetary aspects of an activity are essential. What is non-monetary does not exist. For example, they do not recognize the enormous impact of, for example, the informal economy, where there was, for example, a very huge impact during the Corona crisis, because what was going down was the formal economy, but not the informal. There was a kind of boost of it. When you say that savings are not important, I did a lot of research in public.
I'm not saying they're not important. I'm sorry. I'm not saying they're not important. No, I'm just saying they don't equate revenue that can be invested. That's all I'm saying.
It's a big mistake, because if a public actor can have savings, it can use that income to do other things. So it is seen as what we call a negative income. It's the same with people. If I, for example, have a saving on my budget for housing, then this is for me an additional income that I can use for something else. So in that sense, savings are very explicitly seen as revenues, and mainly also by public agents, because I do a lot of research in the networks where public agents, local and federal, are central. And for them, mainly these savings are seen as a revenue, in the sense that if they do the savings, they can use that money to do other things. They don't have to have taxes. They don't have to get extra. They have extra money by the savings. And for instance, it's a very complex thing. If they, for example, they have green parks, and these green parks regenerate a neighborhood, then it also means, for example, that they attract people with a higher income who are going to live there. So that also means that new small shops can thrive, can can be there. There are so you create actually very often these extra incomes. So
but Natalie, let me just say that first of all, if you take your own household, say you save 500 euros or 300 euros on your electricity bill every month, then you spend that money on something else.
No, it's income. That's income, because an income is used to buy something. So
yeah, but okay, let's not discuss that. But the other thing you are saying,
Louise, it's not your turn to speak. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I will be quiet. But it is land value capture, which is where you leverage the value of an area, and that generates, that like multiplies into higher property prices, more affluent. That's what Copenhagen did, for instance.
Okay, Louise, we will come back to you. So let's go around the panel, okay? I know that you like the dialogue, but then it makes the interaction difficult. So, Natalie, do you want to complete your idea?
So I would say, as in summary, so that culture is very important to take into consideration, yes, very clearly, and we should put it also in the URBiNAT project as a very important aspect. If we want to understand, for example, the management of nature-based solutions and the impact and how it is perceived in society, that depends on the values, the cultural values of that society. And when it comes to economics, yes, savings can be seen as revenues. That's it.
Thank you, Natalie. Let's listen now, Knut-Erik.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Well, the question was on cultures. So my view on it is that cultures, local policies create imbalances and injustices. And as I was saying, that is what mobilizes people to do something about it. And they do that not to make money or to save money. They do that to create social good. They don't need to measure it because they see it with their own eyes. Okay, so that's my take on it. And I actually like analyzing social enterprise activities that that goes across cultures, okay, that are so strong that they can move across cultures and expand over cultures. And there are lots of examples of that, including Human Library and the one that I had in my presentation, Cycling Without Age.
Thank you, Knut-Erik. Marco, do you want to address this topic of culture? I think it was already in your topic, but
yes, I would say very few things. On one side, I would maybe stress on what Louise has said. So she was mentioning the fact that neoliberal economies usually do not having the same welfare that we have, for example, in Europe. In some parts of Europe, I would say they have a different approach on that. And I was really liking the fact that she was stressing on the idea that voluntarism is somehow rooted because of, this could be maybe one of the reasons for that. So I think that this is also something that has to be stressed. And I noticed that also dealing with heritage, and certainly voluntarism, and so all the forms that are somehow around the solidarity in conservation, but in heritage perspective, more developed are actually in those countries that are neoliberal. So those ones that do not have a sort of strong welfare system as we have, especially in the Mediterranean, let's say Italy, France, and Spain, and some of these Mediterranean countries that have developed in the past. And this is also a problem, I would say, even bigger in the former socialist countries. And this I said several times, because there is still, I mean, the remembrance of the importance of the state in taking decision, also in terms of managing the public space, in managing, I mean, inequalities and so on and so forth. So there is, in these former socialist countries, and I was living this in Slovenia, but also in Croatia, the idea that this is not my role, I mean, to manage the differences. It's not up to me to participate. I mean, the idea is that the state is there for that, I mean, to take the right decisions. Of course, I would say, and this is more heritage oriented, there is also a very important role in education in this cultural fact. I would say that those ones that are more keen in looking at the design of things or evaluating the qualities of things are also those ones that are more keen on looking, for example, at reuse, repurposing, not, I mean, refusing to have new. And there are also those ones that are very critical to those technologies or introductions that seems to be innovative but are not. And this is the case of heritage, and I enlarge that in many forms of heritage, from buildings, I mean historic buildings, and here you have people that are convinced that the new buildings are better than the old ones, which is not always the case. And they are not looking at old stuff as good ones, even though they're making of good materials and so on. So I think that education is also is playing a very important role in that. And people that are not, I mean, keen on looking at the details and specificities and history of things are also those ones that are less tendent to the circular economy and the solidarity economy in general. This is for me very much sure.
Thank you, Marco. Milena, I don't know if you have other questions.
I have one more question.
We open the, okay.
Yeah, one more question, which that's why I started with the what, starting with culture, and it's more interesting about the methodology of URBiNAT who and how, and this makes the connection to governance, to the communication between stakeholders, to reconsider whether we need only the bottom-up initiatives and approaches, or we need some frameworks, and it's again bound with the local culture, of course, but I'm very interested, and I will challenge the panelists to think and to comment the URBiNAT case, and as you can refer to some of the front-runner cities or any cities in the project which you know better.
I didn't quite understand the question, Milana.
Well, we are bridging the issue on governance and how we make appropriate frameworks for initiating, channeling, management of this social and solidarity NBSs, and or we should rely only on the bottom-up initiatives.
Okay, maybe we can change a little bit the order now. Knut-Erik, do you want to address this topic?
Well, I'll give it a try. Well, I believe it's a combination, really. I think there are some NBSs that are best managed bottom up, and then there are others where the municipality or the public institutions play an important role in creating the framework for citizens to participate in the NBS development. So I really think it varies. So we have an NBS called participatory NBS, and certainly there, I believe that is very much a bottom-up process, whereas the bigger and the more financially important the construction is in order to create the NBS, the bigger the role is of the public institutions, in my view. But we can't say that either or is what we need to go with. We have to combine those two methods. Also because to start off, we create a space sometimes, and in the end, it's got to be used, that space. And the usage of that space is created by citizens actually getting together using it. And that often requires them organizing bottom up. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Knudrik. So Natalie, she raised her hand, so let's hear her.
Yes, I fully agree with Knut Erik. I think we should not look for one specific framework to manage these nature-based solutions. As I told before, the nature-based solution is managed by means of a network. And in that network, you have different partners. You have profit organizations, public partners, and also social and solidarist economy organizations. And very often, and you have, of course, all these non-organized citizens as well, who have no real organization. They just manage it as they want it themselves. Now, what is very important is that I think according to and depending upon the power positions of these partners, you get another kind of management, which is normal. If the social and solidarist economy organization are very dominant, they will have their kind of management model, which is not a neoclassical one. If you have public organizations dominating, it depends upon the political color of the policymakers. They can be very top down or bottom up. Also citizens, because we may not always say that automatically when citizens are dominant that they will want to have a participatory project, because we have, for example, had a lot of projects where citizens, only a few citizens really take the power and they decide for the whole collectivity what has to be done. So I think the nuances of different types of frameworks according to who is involved and what is the power position and what is their value system, what do they think is important, is that cooperation or competition or something else, that will eventually, I think, determine the management. So it's a kind of multi-phased framework, undoubtedly.
Thank you. Marco?
Yes, well, I should agree with the two interventions that were made before me. I have to say one thing on the, as a preliminary, that the public authorities, they have the authority. I mean, they have, it's their role to make the clear decisions on how the games are played. So if we know, and this is why I don't understand what is happening at the moment, if the scientific community is saying that something is not good for the health of citizens, I mean, the public authorities, they have to take decisions in such a way that those conditions are not repeated anymore. So if plastic is not good for the environment, the public authority has to put the conditions that the plastic is not present anymore in that territory. So this is the first stuff. So I think that public authorities have a very important role in this game. Once you set the conditions that are good for the society, and then the society can have a lot of initiatives like the bottom-ups that were mentioned by Knut Erik and so on and so forth. Coming back to my presentation, I would say that from the governance perspective, I mean, coordinating these initiatives at local level, solidarity economy or NBS or whatever form it is, circular economy, etc., can be done also by the local authority. I think it's important to them, and we made an example in Click that this could be very positive, I would say, even because there are some things that can be done only thanks to the help of the public authorities. For example, reuse of materials of dismantled and deconstructed buildings. This can be done only thanks to the help of local authorities, because people are needing spaces to put, the dismantled materials. They need, of course, to have a sort of sensitization of the population about the importance of this reuse. And this can be done probably only by the public authorities. Examples is Rotor, for example, which is a company in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Brussels, but there are many. You have the Bank of Material in Porto, which is managed by the public authority. So it's a free bank of materials that people can pick up usually tiles in Porto, that can pick up to restore their facades. So this is public, but the same can be done by a private company with the help of local authorities. I know Rotor is a very good example of that. They do dismantling buildings, selecting the materials, but they need, of course, the support of the public authorities in terms of providing, for example, the spaces or facilitating their activity, which is socially beneficial. So I think that it's true, both senses, but the public should be there, I think.
Thank you, Marco. Louise, do you want to complement some idea with this in this topic of governance?
I think that governments play much like the former Marco was just saying. Governments play a very important role in regulating and guiding our economies in the right direction. So, many governments, they have like a green tax on energy bills, and they use that that tax revenue to finance green investments, right? Or they regulate traffic by having road tax, like in London. So, governments play a very important role in steering economies in a desired direction. And I think that is important. And obviously, they also usually have quite vast funds available to make investments. So,
thank you, Louise. So maybe, I don't know, Milena, maybe we can open for some questions from the audience, or do you want to address? Let's hear the audience and then we come back to you.
Let's open questions.
Okay.
To the audience. Yeah.
Is there someone that wants to bring some question to the panel? No? Okay.
I have one question, maybe, Gonçalo.
Yes, Natalie, please.
Thank you to all of you. You made very different presentations. It was very, very interesting. I've got one question, Natalie, about, you mentioned two things. You mentioned about COVID-19. Maybe if you can talk a little bit more about COVID-19, what it reveals, or about social and solidarity economy, both negative and positive, both opportunities and weaknesses, maybe. And you also mentioned about formal and informal. And formal and informal is very interesting because in Europe, at least, we do not value so much the informal. It's kind of negative. We are also always afraid of not being on the radar of the state, maybe because of taxes. And in other parts of the world, it's a little bit different. So if you can bring more about this, because about alternatives, meaning if we can find alternatives and how social and solidarity economy brings alternatives which are not, which are mixed.
Okay, yes. So when we have looked at the corona crisis and what happened, so I can speak mainly for Belgium, in Flanders and in Wallonie, so the north and the south. It's only now a first kind of tentative inventory that we make, and we have now also handed in some project that we want to do to go really for scientific investigation. But very interesting was that due to the corona crisis, we had a huge problem in the formal economy. And so because people had to stay home, they could not go to work and so on. But the informal economy was really boosting. I mean, for example, it was on mobility. So for example, elderly people had to go also now for their vaccination, for example. There are very creative solutions where neighbors or people living in the neighborhood have some kind of joint mobility plans and all kinds of initiatives, also with their bicycle routes and so on. Also by the food, we had people who were a huge problem, also poor people who said we have a huge problem of getting food and for our children. Also in the education system, we had all kinds of volunteers because that is very important. We get that informal economy, which is an economy where you do not explicitly pay for your service or your product. Mostly it's a kind of exchange that you make, and there is no value expression in money, but there is a value expression in for example, also the enthusiasm of people and are willing to give a kind of exchange. If, for example, getting food is very important, you see that these people are willing to give in exchange all kinds of things, also services. So actually, these products and services have a value, but it is not in monetary terms. And we saw, for example, and we have had some researchers in sociology that said, if you would calculate it in monetary terms, it would really have given a boost because the worth, the value, people thought it was very important to get these services and so on. So what we have seen is that in certain environments, political environments, progressive environments, environments of green parties, we see, as you very clearly say, a kind of reappreciation of the informal economy. Because when economy is about services and products that we need for our daily life and that we need to get and give, so sell and buy, then that economy is actually very much underestimated, but very important. And we see that even when the formal economy drops dead, the informal economy can boost. But as you said, it is not very traditionally and certainly not in your classical thinking to see the informal economy even as an economy. They even say it's not economy because there's no money involved. Whereas, well, economy is about values and given value that you give for something, for an exchange. And what is also interesting is that in this informal economy, we also saw that the social and solidarist organizations stepped into it. So actually they supported it. They supported it also by, for example, saying, okay, if you want to arrange something in a mobility network, we can help because we have the competences to do so. And we also have the people here, so vulnerable people working here who are capable and willing to join in. So actually we saw a huge commitment of the social and solidarist economy. We saw a huge increase of informal economy all over, but, and that's a very interesting one, the policy makers, which are still very neoclassically inspired, especially in Flanders, they want to go back to the past, to the neoclassical system. So there is a kind of huge tension growing at this moment between our society and different agents in our society who appreciate and want a respect the informal economy and the social and solidarist economy, whereas the politicians do not see it in such way. So this is a very strange thing. I do not know what will happen in the long run, because what happens also is that then, for example, certain organizers of informal activities become demotivated. We are not seen, it is not appreciated. We see solidarist and social economy organizations that have huge, let's say, debts because they have invested in the informal economy, but there is no way to get it back so that they have extra means, to continue. So we are in this case in a very schizophrenic situation. So we have really, and that's very strange. There's no reaction from the left side. So we normally expected, and a lot of people expected, that it would become a huge political debate, but that's not the case. So it's a bit strange. So nonetheless, that it becomes more important, it is not yet on the political agenda. And it is more on the political agenda in the south than in the north. So in Wallonie, I see it more than in the north. Perhaps it has to do with the richer part of the country and the poorer part of the country. That's possible. I don't know. So it's still a kind of puzzle, but it's a very, very important question, but I cannot give yet the full answer.
Thank you, Natalie. I don't know if the others want to address the topic of the informal economy.
Gonçalo, I would like just to add something about that. I think it's very interesting to discuss. During the first meeting, we discussed about the state role, and I think the state role is very important to recognize the informal economy. I think in particular to reduce the idea of certain criminalization around informal economy. So that I think to discuss the state role is very relevant for that. The other strategy in terms of semantic. So for this reason, use the social solidarity economy as part of the social economy, but there are a strong difference in terms of the recognition of informal initiative. So for this reason, solidarity economy is important and at the same time strategic to recognize the informal initiatives, because the social economy, it's not possible to recognize this type of initiative through the social economy. Of course, that is our objective with this seminar. And also, since the 2016, there is in the Parliament, European Commission and the Parliament, political discussion around the solidarity economy, the use of terminology of solidarity economy, more formal, and also as part of the public policies, just to bring some these thoughts to reinforce this discussion around the informal economy.
Thank you, Beatriz. Marco, you have your hands raised, but I'm not sure if you want to contribute or if you left it.
Yeah, it is from before.
Okay. Okay, so do we have any other questions? Beatriz, you have your hands raised, but it's... Yeah.
But I have a question taking advantage of this continuous a question to Marco, just to if Marco could be bring some ideas around the similarities between solidarity economy and circular economy. So there are many practices from solidarity economy, such as reduce, reuse, repair is very common in solidarity economy principle, is part of the solidarity economy principle. So do you think it's common, it's possible to reinforce solidarity economy through the circular economy? There are is complements in terms of conceptualization or not? How do you think about the relation between these two approaches?
Well, I'm not being an economist. I cannot go too much into detail on that. But for the practice I have, looking as an architect, conservation architect, to what I was doing before or learning before and what was done, for example, in the CLIC project, I see that, of course, there are a lot of similarities. I think that the solidarity economy is taking advantage of the circular economy, because the circular economy is actually proposing different forms of using spaces, objects, and approaching life. And these different uses are, of course, advantaging the solidarity economy. Once, of course, you adopt the idea of recycling or reusing or repurposing, restoring, let's call it, as well as, I would say, since the beginning, refusing, it's something that goes to the advantage of the solidarity economy, because clearly, I mean, you re-put on the market something that was in principle without any use. And this is, of course, recreating what Natalie was referring very clearly. I mean, this informal economy, which is, feeding this informal economy, which is to the advantage, of course, to those ones that are not in the official economy. So those ones that are in need of solidarity. It could be very strong need, or very light need, but it's, of course, it's feeding, those segments of the society that are needing, solidarity. If it's not only, by the way, it's not only about the society. I would say we don't stress too much in URBiNAT that we are an extended community, let's say, of living beings. It's not only humans, it's also animals and so on and so forth. And for sure, the circular economy goes to the advantage of these other beings that are excluded simply because they are not part of a formal society.
Thank you, Marco. Natalie, do you want to?
Yes, yes. It is so that actually the social and solidarist economy goes hand in hand with the circular economy, because circular economy is one key feature of a social and solidarist economy, and it is part of what we call the intergenerational solidarity. If we have a circular economy, then it means we take care about the future generations. We have solidarity with future generations because we make the world habitable and good in such a way. So I think there is a very clear connection. What does not mean that all circular economy are social and solidarist economy. So it's, but social and solidarist economy organizations actually, by means of their nature, they should and are interested in circular economy and also sustainability in the broad sense. What I want to add also, Marco, was I was interested in your case study, where you connect the historical buildings and historical restoration with also circular economy, because in Belgium and Flanders, for example, at this moment, we have some social and solidarist economy organizations that are specialized in cleaning and repairing monuments in the public space. So, and also the parks surrounding the monuments. So in that sense, actually, they have very different economic impacts. On the one hand, for example, they will increase the capacities and the competences of vulnerable people working in the social and solidarist organizations to know how to do restorations and so on. So it's a kind of upgrading of their capacities and their value on the labor market. At the same time, we see that economic value also has to do with the fact that by repairing these monuments that have a very important meaning in the identity, for example, of local people or even cities in general, it increases actually the proudness that people have, and they come to the monument and they want to picnic around the monument. So we get very unexpected reactions, especially in Corona, because we have seen that in Corona, people are going to these parks and so on, but especially those where you have these cleaned up monuments and banks where you can sit upon. So it was not really intended like that. It was a kind of serendipity, but we see that actually in such a way, these social and solidarist economy organizations, they come into the picture because everybody asks who has done this and so on. And it's a kind of, an extra element that I think is very interesting to look at, because it is a niche for social and solidarist economy organizations that is in exploration. In the past, they did not do it. So they were more busy with, catering and cleaning. But now they say, no, there is a niche of being part in the historical buildings and repairing them. Sorry? Oh.
Or it was a message.
It
that
was a message, yeah.
The record.
So I think it is
Cancel
interesting
the record.
to look at nature-based solutions with these new elements of, what is regeneration and what is it all about, and how we have the link with the past and the future. So yeah, I think these are interesting case studies. I think perhaps we could look at it, especially in Work Package 5.4, because if we want to have the impact, it's also of these cultural elements that you revive. For example, we have also the opposite. That's still something I want to say. For example, there were the huge riots on the statues of Leopold II. Have you heard it in Belgium? So Leopold II was a very authoritarian king who did all kinds of things in Congo. And so what happened was that at a certain moment, when you had these Black Lives Matter, all these statues were destroyed everywhere in the city. And no one wanted to restore them. So it was a political statement. So that's also very fascinating, that in these activities of nature-based solutions, sometimes you get these politically very sensitive things that can be very important if we want to assess the impact. It might be an impact that has to do with a kind of mental revolution also. I mean, I think it's very interesting. Yeah. Okay, that was it.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if we are approaching the end of this fruitful discussion. I would like to, I don't know if Louise is still around.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
You end your presentation with the question, what can we do? And I would like to ask you and maybe the others if we can. I think we went through several topics that maybe can give some clues about what can we do with the business cases. And I was wondering if either, for instance, the issue of addressing a little bit as Natalie did with the ROI, if we could add the social business cases, or if we could take from Knudderik the idea of creating a citizens entrepreneurship that can activate some business cases, starting from the citizens. Maybe they are interested to create a business case from the proposals that they have. So if we could explore the idea of circular economy in a network of companies and citizens and municipalities, because I think, for instance, the circular economy is an issue that cities are promoting in the cities, and they are trying to involve companies, profit companies, in the process. So maybe it could be a way of making the companies interested in developing some of our nature-based solutions. So do you think we can find here some solutions for your question?
Yes. I spoke to Sroe in the break, and he said to me, I mean, he said, you know, there is a built-in, how can you say, friction between what our mandate is in the Work Package 7 and then the discussion we're having now. There is some built-in friction, you know, because it has the KPIs of Work Package 7, they are listed in such a way that, you know, what we have been doing to date is basically responding to those KPIs, whereas this conversation is slightly different. And in terms of circular economy, we do have companies that we have investigated and that are part of our research results that are within the circular economy. I mean, they recycle materials or waste, and they're quite, you know, successful, profitable in doing so. So, you know, I mean, the companies that we have, just because they're earning money doesn't make them bad. You know, they're still doing good things. You know, suddenly it's become like a bad thing if you're earning money. But they have to be, you know, marketable, bankable, and the survey does show that citizens, they, you know, if they want something, they'll buy it, right, from these NBS solution providers, but they actually value the free park the most. It's you know, I mean, to be honest, Søren said to me, let's just lie down flat out and say we don't have this. That's, you know, but I think we should try and see if we can reach some kind of compromise or somehow embrace it, you know.
Yeah, I think also the possibility of revise our goals and try to find other ways of doing.
And do you know how much work you're creating for yourself, Gonzalo, when you recommend that we?
No, but it's good work, so it's. Okay, Natalie, you have your hands raised, yeah?
Yes, I think something that is very interesting if you look at these, what you call then, Louise, nature-based solution organizations from a profit point of view, could be how they perceive, for example, elements like circular economy, nature-based solution, and what for them in their business model creates added value. Why are they doing it? So what is the benefit? What is the non-benefit? And also, how do they see and perceive partners in it? The public organizations at the federal level or local level, citizens. So I think it would be very interesting if Work Package 7 would highlight a bit their perspective and how they see it, and how, for example, do they evaluate it? What kind of impact measurement do they do? Whether it is good or bad is not really the issue, but the issue is that we make all partners in a nature-based solution visible with their rationale, with their ideas, and perhaps we can also see that between all these stakeholders in nature-based solutions, there might be more fundamental differences, for example, in concepts and how they define it, or there may be no conceptual ones, but more operational ones. So I think it might be interesting to focus upon who are they, what do they want, and also in qualitative terms, I think it would be very interesting. And I also believe that there is a huge difference between these organizations. For example, very small local entrepreneurs, even though they are profit, have very different business models than the big ones. So so I think it might be interesting to step aside from stereotyping and try to make a kind of clearer picture on the basis of collected data and cases. I think that would have a huge added value. Also, for example, for the Work Package 5.4, if we want to elaborate the social return on investment, we look at all stakeholders involved and how they perceive the impact. Well, of course, the profit organizations who are involved will also have their idea on perceived value. If there are differences, it's interesting to see the differences. So it's just a suggestion that I think would be very interesting. Also for me, it would be very interesting. It perhaps will be also some eye-opener, you never know.
So yeah, thank you. We are actually looking at most of the things you're saying. We're not trying to see how different, and also most of the nature-based solution providers that we have identified are classified as small companies. We are not, or they're all classified as small companies actually. We're not looking at, you know, their conceptual differences and more academic or theoretical aspects, but we are looking at, you know, what do they perceive as a value proposition and who are their partners and, you know, all these things that are actually in the business model canvas. So we do that. And right now I'm unsure if we have shared all that information with you, and Søren is apparently not here. But I'll check up on that my presumption is that we have, but I'll check it. So we do that, and you know, there are no stereotypes, and to be honest, I think, you know, a lot of these companies, you know, I have a small company, and my main motivation was to change the world, and I think most of those companies, they want to change the world, but you know.
But that is interesting because
but they still need to earn money, otherwise they go out of business.
Yes, and it is more the question of not what they do, but why do they do it? What is the underlying value? And I think there are very different ideas. You have sometimes these idealistic profit organizations. You have others who have others. So I think it might be interesting to know the why, because that's also important when you want to manage the network of nature-based solution. You have to identify the different types of profit organizations. And if you want to motivate them to engage themselves, you need to know why do they think certain things are important and how do they cope with it? Because I think that's a very important one. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Natalie. Marco, one final comment. Marco, we cannot hear you.
Yes, not final. I'm not so important to have the last word, but I think that a very important role in this still is from the public authority is giving the examples. Unfortunately, very few cases of local authorities are giving the example. I did it. I can say that for historic buildings, for example, maintenance, the maintenance practice is a very good local-oriented business. Which is feeding, I mean, the local economy, and is very often also proposing nature-based solutions. And the local authorities are the first ones that are not practicing it. So they do not maintain the shutters, they do not maintain the windows, they do not do good maintenance of the plasters. As another example, they do not do any kind of support of the local economies. I was living in Venice, and in all the buildings of the public sectors, I've never found any small detail made in Murano glass. How this is possible? That they are promoting the Murano glass as a local product if they never use that Murano glass to be displayed in their buildings. I mean, and this is the case. I mean, if they want to have green roofs because they are improving the biodiversity in your city, as a city you have to implement them. And in the Netherlands, there are examples of very small companies that are doing the green roofs in steep roofs. So it's not a matter of having flat roofs or steep roofs. It's possible. I mean, there are technologies that are rooted in the past. It's a matter of copying what people were doing 200 years ago. I mean, making a little innovation in technologies. But if the public authorities is not doing this, I mean, how can you expect that you have businesses around? So, I mean, this is my small comment on this.
Thank you. Natalie, do you want to do?
Yes, I fully agree, because and that's also sometimes the schizophrenic reasoning in especially the political policymakers, because in public organizations you have the administration and you have the political reasoning. But what I want to add, Marco, is that we have seen, for example, in research, that it also has to do with what we call the electoral cycle. So after the elections, you know, nobody is interested. But before the elections, then suddenly they want to gain voters. And then, for example, suddenly they come into action and they, for example, oh yes, we have to stimulate the local economy. And you see very strange thing happening. So in the historical restoration of a building, no local people were involved. And suddenly the politician said, and now it has to be. Why? Because, you know, there is a kind of political rationale behind their decision-making, which is also very important to take into consideration. But you're quite right. We also see only few examples where you have a kind of consistent sustainability and circular economy reasoning of politicians. So, yeah, okay. So I found it a very interesting remark.
Thank you. So I don't know if there is any other last question. We have other also from the audience. If you want to put one last question or we do a wrap up? Okay, so maybe it's already a long discussion. So maybe Milena, are you there? Do you want to do a wrap up of the session? Some final reflection?
Yeah, just to summarize that we had very interesting presentations here on the market, starting with the market potential and social and solidarity. NBS is going through questioning to what extent this social and solidarity NBS could be a new business modality in different situations, and whether in welfare state or in other social structures. But also we had here the good presentation of Knudrik, which focused on the issues of social entrepreneurship and bottom-up approaches, and showing some mechanisms of how NBS that could be sustained. And of course, Marcos and the accent of Natalie, how we can monitor and evaluate the impacts. So it turns out that there are many diverse directions depending on how we approach NBS in social solidarity economy, and how we which governance models we accept and decide and together to implement and to develop. Also Marcos presentation on the circular economy and the proof that it could truly social and solidarity economy could be perceived as circular economy, and it's not the vice versa. So here it still stays the challenge on the different dimensions of social and solidarity economy as a business case, or just a value, speaking in the broader terms of cultural perceptions, but also questioning the pure traditional economic value and market potential of the social and solidarity NBSs, and also the potential of finding, it's very important as mentioned by several panelists, of trying to find out the win-win solutions to bring together the intermediaries, the public sector, and the citizens around the consensus on choosing the different models, management models of the solutions implemented.
Thank you, Milena, for this overview of the session. Thank you all for all the great presentation and also for the great discussion. It was really important for us to listen all your observations, comments, proposals. And I think now I will give the floor to Beatriz and Natalie to close the webinar's sessions, and thank you all. Thank you to both of you also for the organization.
Okay.
Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gonçalo. First of all, I would like to invite everyone to stay more 5 minutes with us, just to because we would like to propose a very, very quick dynamic to finish, to celebrate, and also to think about the different topics from the webinar. First, I would like to share some thoughts during these 3 days. I was just to move my table for here. I was to collect some general information general information about what we discussed during these 3 days of seminars. We had 15 communications, different communications, in total 9, at about 9 hours of this seminar, debates and very interesting conversations. I think it was a wonderful moment to discuss the solidarity economy and the relation with the urban regeneration. So first the day, just to share with the audience, with you, what we discussed during the first day about urban public space, common justice, and social reproduction. When the first meeting for the focus on urban neighborhoods are a set of complex socioeconomic statements from the first seminar about urban neighborhoods are a set of complex socioeconomic and emotional relations instead of a mere space for living. Community-based initiatives depend much on solidarity ties made of common interest, reciprocity, and trust. Democratic solidarity is distinct from the solidarity based on the values of charity, altruism, or philanthropy. Public policies for solidarity economy and the institutional recognition of its positive role compared to market economy. The other topics from the speakers during the first seminar was the state and market unable to solve the social problems, and by the consequence, the return of the third protagonist, in this case, the community, and the importance of the role of community. The transformative dimension of solidarity economy for the private urban areas, democratizing the economy and enlarging the public space, and the commons and sustainable cooperation between users and public actors is an important strategy to reduce the public space monopoly. The other type, until during the first day, the discuss around the role played by the different international network. The participation of REPES was very interesting to bring some ideas about what happened in terms of international context of solidarity economy, and the role of REPES focused on 3-dimensional strategies, namely the solidarity economy ecosystem, recognition and movement, international movement. There are several movements from local, regional, and national. REPES presenting during their communication some examples of these international movements focused on the relation between economy and city, transformative economies, transition towns, and several solidarity economy actions on climate change committed to provide solutions to the economic, ecological, and health crisis. Also, it's urgent to consider together solidarity elements with democratic sphere, rethink how we organize the communities, enterprises, economy, expand democracy to all economic and social life, fighting inequalities and seeking social justice through forms of self-organization, and also the commons-oriented approach. Landscape, urban regeneration, the other topics from our colleagues from EcoSol was the landscape and urban regeneration should be ensured the right to the city. It depends of the meaning and the capacity to communicate the plurality in the city. And that is the debate on some effects from colonialization and the effects from historic trajectory of colonialism. For example, how to communicate this plurality and how to reduce the effects of inequality from that. The role of solidarity economy how to connect citizenship and promote more resilient communities, and how the solidarity economy political and social project can reduce the effects of inequalities based on gender, ethnic, racial origin, and among the others in urban space. Very, very quickly about the second day, the focus was this socioeconomic practice for neighborhoods vitalization. It was a very interesting discussion around the social currencies as the tool created and used by communities, municipalities, groups, and individuals in order to facilitate exchanges of both products and services or knowledge attached to a series of objective elements and values. Solidarity economy practice as an opportunity for create sustainable and social inclusive cities, the linking with sustainable development goals, in particular the 11 SDG and circular economy, social currencies and markets as revolutionary space where mutual help, values, and solidarity are the core of the experience, the creation of jobs, in particular to include the vulnerable groups through the social currency, and of course was very important to reinforce the plurality of experience from the URBiNAT cities, in particular from Sofia, with the potential of bread house network, with few financial resources to build a community kitchen and transform art and culture with cooking into social inclusion, the bread as symbol of peace and unity, and the bread making foster cooperation, collective experience. From one side, the social and solidarity economy represents 16% of jobs in the private sector. The metropolis relies on the ecosolis, the cooperation and social innovation cluster, one of the main actors that implement the strategy co-constructed with Nats Metropole. And also from Porto, the experience about the participatory process within urban plan as the catalyst to promote solidarity economy initiatives, namely, in particular, for proposal from citizens, mobile kitchen, community garden, solidarity fairs and markets, and community oven. The innovation dimension of these initiatives it's very, it's the innovation dimension of the presence of solidarity economy for the municipality, for the Porto municipality. The role of solidarity economy also about the food waste management. I think the debate around the huge scale of the problem of the food waste with different social and environment consequences. We discussed different experience of food waste, different approach, top down from government or bottom up for community. What is very interesting to take in consideration the case of cooperative fruta feia, for example, or a food program, the idea of community gardens and agri-food circuits, and some innovations from designer solutions such as photovoltaic food and energy production, water saving, flood mitigation. And finally, the city play a central role to food waste management and urban practice that can support it. I don't know to repeat or to comment again, because I think Milena already done it to reinforce the general aspects about the third day, about our meeting. I would like just to highlight some aspects more related to the importance of non-monetary impacts visible. I think Sroe, it's interesting to reinforce the presence in the debate around cultural aspects and the non-monetary impacts, the need of to create more visibility of non-monetary impacts. Just to highlight the circular dimension, I think there are many components is very common: reduce, reuse, repair, refurbished. I think there are social organizations, social practice from solidarity economy based on reduce, reuse, but more focus on community. So that's interesting to identify the connection between some industrial process from circular economy and community process from solidarity economy. Maybe it's important. That is an interesting discussion to take for the future. Also, the connection with URBiNAT from CLIC project, I think in fact the cultural mapping time bank as a supportive strategy to build this cultural corridor, I think is interesting to identify the connection and the network between European projects. And just to now, in fact, to finalize, I would like just to reinforce the idea. And probably in fact, we had an effective circular seminar, because during the first seminar, we started the seminar series with a discussion of commons, and the last presentation with Marco returned with the principles for managing the commons according to Sroe theory. So we starting with the commons and finish with the commons. I think that is an effective circular seminar about solidarity economy, but not also, I think, a very interdisciplinary, circular and solidarity based approach in this scientific dialogue in this seminar series. So I would like to thank you for everyone for this wonderful debate. And I would like to give the floor for Natalie just to apply the dynamic, the final dynamic of the seminar series.
Yes, if you are still, just keep it sharing, please, Beatrice. Just keep it sharing and go to the next slide. If you are still with energy to do that, if you would like to, maybe you can do it on your cell phone. If you have a smartphone, you can use this QR code, or you go directly on your computer. If you can go to the website menti.com and enter this code, so we can ask you just 2 questions to finish and collect your final inputs. Does it work for everyone? Going to menti.com and enter this code, or to scan this QR code with your smartphone? Yes, for Jose Luis, that's okay. For Gonzalo, that's okay. For Beatrice, that's okay. Beatrice, do you want to go to the next slide? I think that you will all see this, the question that will be in the slide. Do you all have this question? I think if you can enter the answer in your smartphone or in your computer. So which benefits does the solidarity economy offer to regeneration processes of the urban public spaces? So after this 3 days event, you will have a lot of inputs and inspiration for us. Okay, Natalie, I see. It does not work from your side, but we will share with you all the answers, just to complement also with your answers. I think maybe it was the first time that you saw this menti.com, right, Natalie? Maybe, yeah. But sure, you will use it other times with URBiNAT. No worries. And then I will show you the answer. Some answers are still coming in. Okay, but if you want Natalie to share in the chat, just share with us also what you think, and we will add it to the picture. So which benefits does the solidarity economy offer the regeneration process of the urban public spaces? You can answer, I think you can answer several times if you have a lot of inspiration. Okay. So we have 7 answers here and more, 8 now. Okay. Okay, so may we move to the next question, or do you still want to answer more? So I'm moving to the next question. And so can you all refresh your browser on your smartphone or on the computer? Normally you have this question now: during the 3-day event, which aspects on solidarity economy were missing or you would like to further explore? You can enter answers several times. I think it's enabled. Is it working for all? Natalie, please answer in the chat. That's fantastic. We'll collect also this way your answers. Okay, someone entered already an answer. The others are still thinking of good answers or bad answers. Bad answers are good as well. Okay.
Can we see the answers? No.
I'm going to show it now, because we had a final question about assessing the seminar, but I think we will send it by email so you can answer it more easily. Beatrice, can you stop sharing the screen so I share mine and you see all the answers we've given? Starting with the last one, which is still working. So we have here: during the 3-day event, which aspects on solidarity economy were missing or you would like to further explore? So we have 9 answers. The state role that we mentioned but did not explore so much. Mapping models in URBiNAT cities. We had a little bit about cultural mapping, and in the perspective of the CLICS project, there is a very nice feature of mapping the 5 senses, and maybe that's a good idea also to see how follower cities in URBiNAT include also this inspiration. About social enterprises, the citizens' perspective. We mentioned that we needed to ask citizens, but we need to get more inputs about that. The alternative currencies. We had currencies during the 2nd day of the seminar, but when we will have some publications with the result of this 3-day event, we can reinforce this. The market potential from solidarity's perspective, yes, and we also addressed with Louise how we can increase this in connection with Work Package 7. Cultural peculiarities from city to city. We said that it was important, but we did not enter in too much detail. So how in the 7 cities of URBiNAT we can have it. Politician perspective, of course. We did not have politicians with us. That's a shame. We should have the next event, of course. Management, yes. We did not address the after creating. To go further about the possibility of including the social currencies in front-runner cities, maybe organizing a special moment to go more in depth social currencies, and Beatrice and Marco were pushing forward on this. Commons management from public perspectives. Yeah, we addressed commons in the 1st day of the event, but we should go more about that. Let me see if I can enter more. Maybe if I go back in the first question also, which benefits does the solidarity economy offer to regeneration process of the urban public spaces? We have citizen engagement. Okay, that's strong since the beginning of the project. We even have a work package dedicated to that. Bottom-up initiatives, yes, it's what has been reinforced. Inclusiveness and sense of ownership. I think that Natalie mentioned a lot about that in connection to Marco's presentation about the cultural aspects. Social relations, solidarity ties, cultural approach, community engagement, participatory democracy. We addressed a little bit this of democracy, but we should connect it with other work packages to make it an holistic analysis. Co-management, co-improvement, productivity, values, democratic values, sustainable process. So a lot of benefits that are clearly in line with the results of the project so far, at least the scientific results, and we should now address more analysis on that. So we will send you by email an evaluation, a very short evaluation scale, and we will share with you also this final inputs, so you can also bring this inspiration to your to URBiNAT and your other practices. Beatrice, I think I'm finished with the dynamic.
Yes, I think just to reinforce our thank you for everyone, for the speakers, for Gonçalo, for moderating the session today. So thank you for the speakers from the other meetings, the previous meeting also. José Luis is here. He was our speakers during the second meeting. So I think it was 3 intensive days, but very, very important for not only for the URBiNAT, but the possibility to share this knowledge with in other contexts. Our proposal is to prepare now short publication, edition from SES Context with the different communication. And also that is the other strategy to share this knowledge, different knowledge with the other sisters projects, networks, organizations, etc. So we keep in touch with the speakers and with the participants to turn this strategy in real context. So to do that as up one more probably during this in the next month to work on this, on the preparation of this publication. So thank you. I don't know, Gonçalo, if you'd like to say something, to add something. So, but from my side, thank you again. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you a lot for everyone.
Well, just to say goodbye and say that we are looking forward for the next discussions on the economic issues, crossing the several topics that we mentioned, and it will be an important part of the URBiNAT. So for the ones that are in URBiNAT, you will be all involved. For the others that we see here, we hope to have you on the board on the next public discussions. So thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Gonçalo, also just to complement, thank you for for items to support us in the communication strategy. So I think it reinforce our thank you since the beginning. So with us to prepare these seminars, and thank you for the SES team, Natalie, Fabio, Gonçalo, to help us in this job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Keep in touch. See
Bye.
you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Adeus. Obrigado.